Hello and a very good evening to everyone. A very warm welcome to you all. And it's too wonderful to have such a committed group of educators joining us today. I'm Smriti from Team Luneblaze, and it's always a pleasure to connect with you. So today's discussion is on a very important topic, that is the school's assessment, the holistic progress card. As envisioned under NEP 2020, the HPC moves us beyond the marks and exams to a more comprehensive understanding of student development. It captures not only the academic process, but also the skills, values, attitudes, interest, and the well-being, recognizing that every child's learning journey is very unique. Across schools, there is a growing realization that assessment is not about comparison, but about guiding progress. The HPC supports continuous. Okay, I think there is some disturbance over here. Okay, so the HPC, it will supports the continuous competency-based and formative assessment practices that help teachers personalize learning and provide the meaningful feedback. At Luneblaze, we have worked with hundreds of schools and colleges over the past 8 years, supporting them in turning the educational frameworks like NEP 2020, NCF, and HPC into the practical school-ready systems. Our focus goes beyond the compliance. We aim to help schools implement assessment practices that are purposeful, sustainable, and learner-centered. So today's session, it will explore how the holistic progress card can become a powerful tool for transformation, where assessment supports learning, feedback drives the improvement, and every child progress is valued. So let's begin today's session and explore how effective HPC implementation can help us nurture confident, capable, and future-ready learners. So let's move ahead in the presentation and see that at Luneblaze, we believe that understanding a framework is only the first step. What truly matters is how it is translated into everyday practice. So we also recognize that implementing HPC can feel challenging at first, as it requires shift in assessment, documentation, and reporting. So this is why, like today's session is designed to make such reforms more clear and actionable. By unpacking the key ideas, sharing practical examples, and discussing classroom-ready assessment approaches aligned with holistic development. So our aim is to bridge the gap between the policy and the practice so that the holistic progress card moves beyond the concept and becomes a meaningful tool to support learning and growth. Equally important is the professional community built throughout these interactions, educators learning from one another and strengthening practices together. So all participants will also be receiving a certificate of the participation, recognizing the commitment to improving assessment practices and continuous school improvement. So moving ahead, it's time to welcome our expert speaker for today's webinar, Ms. Archana Awade. And we are so delighted that she has joined us today. She's General Manager at Aditya Birla Education Academy in Mumbai and is a highly experienced lead auditor with her extensive experience in curriculum design, assessment systems, and teacher capacity building. She brings the valuable insights into translating assessments reforms into the effective school practices. So through her work with educators and school leaders, she has supported schools in moving beyond marks-based assessment towards reflected, learner-centered assessment aligned with the national education priorities. So it is a privilege to have her with us today as we explore the purpose, key domains, and the practical implementation of HPC. So we look forward to learning from you, ma'am, from your experience and the practical perspectives that you will be bringing to us in today's webinar. So before we hand it over to ma'am, let's just have a brief look about what all we'll be discussing today. So we'll start by setting the context with a quick look at the SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals, highlighting how holistic education and learner development connect to the global priorities. Further from there, we'll revisit the key ideas of NEP 2020, which lay the foundation for assessment reforms in schools. We then move into the core of today's webinar, understanding the holistic progress card. This includes its purpose, key domains, and the shift from marks-based evaluation to competency-based and formative assessment practices. So to bring this to life, we'll also explore some practical examples and implementation insights, followed by an interactive question answers round to address your queries. We'll also share that how schools can be supported in adopting the holistic assessment practices in a structured and sustainable way. So we'll conclude the session with key takeaways and reflections before wrapping up. And with that, it is now my pleasure to invite Ms. Archana Awade to the session. And ma'am, the session is over to you. Please take it ahead and guide us all, through today's discussion. Thank you so much.
So thank you, Team Luneblaze, for that kind introduction. So good evening to all the wonderful educators present here today. So it is truly a pleasure to connect with such a dedicated group of teachers who not just teach subject, but also mentor students to shape their future. I would really like to sincerely thank you for taking a time out of your busy schedule to be here today. So your presence itself shows your commitment to continuous improvement. So I truly look forward to your active participation, your reflections, and your valuable insight throughout the session. So let us keep this space interactive, energized, and full of learning. So feel free to use the chat box, and when invited, unmute and share your thoughts. This session is not a one-way lecture, it is a shared learning journey. So let us think together, reflect together, and grow together. So with that, let us begin our session. So before we go deeper into the holistic progress card, let us step back and look at the bigger picture. So have you heard about SDG? Can you type your answers in the chat box? Have you heard about Sustainable Development Goals? Is there on your screen? Yes. Okay. So you are aware about. So how it is connected to education? How it is connected to education? Can I have answers in the chat box? Am I audible to everyone? Long-lasting outcomes. Okay, Rajni Kumar. Yes. What else? How it is connected to education? We use in our lesson plans inclusive and quality education, right, Priyanka Gera ma'am? So yes, the SDG is talking about the quality education. So in 2015, the United Nations gave the world a shared vision for the future called the Sustainable Development Goals, which in short we call SDGs. And they are the universal call to action with a purpose to end poverty, to protect our planet, and to ensure that by 2030, all the people live in peace and prosperity. So now, out of these 17 SDGs, there is one goal that directly fits in our classrooms. And that is the SDG goal number 4, that is quality education. And this SDG 4 says to ensure inclusive and equitable quality education and promote lifelong learning opportunities for all. So this sentence, this goal is very important for all of us as an educator, because it does not say ensure high marks for all. It says ensure high quality education for all. So SDG 4 tells us what kind of education the world needs. And the holistic progress card shows us how to build that education in our schools. We can move it to the next slide. So before we go and talk about the HPC, let me ask you a simple question. So imagine this situation. There is a student named Ravi who is studying in class 8. And Ravi gets the scores in maths 36, in science 35, English 38, and social studies 37. And we all happily say, good, Ravi has passed. Now I ask you something honestly. Did Ravi really learn well, or did Ravi only survive the exams? You can type your answer in your chat box. Did Ravi genuinely acquire knowledge, or did he merely manage to pass the exam? He just got through. Yes, Rajni Kumar, correct. Survived the exam. Survived the exam. Okay. So now he just survived. Okay. So he just passed the exam, but just barely he passed the exam. Now you think deeper. Ravi passed in marks, but what about his managed passing the exam, right? So but what about his confidence, his communication skills, his teamwork, his creativity, his problem solving ability, his values and attitude? So none of these skills are been highlighted in his mark sheet. But these are very important skills the Ravi needs in his real life. So let me say that this clearly tells us that 35 marks helps a child pass an exam, but it cannot help a child to pass life. Skills has to be measured. Yes, yes. So this is exactly why the NEP 2020 introduced the holistic progress card, because education should not only ask how much did the child score, but it should also ask how is the child growing as a human being. And that's why the NEP 2020 has introduced the holistic progress card for the overall uh, growth of the child, reflecting the overall growth of the students of our school. Can we move on to the next slide? So this brings me to what is the holistic progress card. So now we know why change is needed in education. Let us clearly understand what the holistic progress card actually is. So many people think it is just a new type of report card. But in reality, it is a new way of looking at the child. The holistic progress card is a child-centric assessment record. That means the focus is not only on the syllabus, not on the exam, and not on the comparison. The focus is on the child. It answers a very important questions, like how is this child growing as a learner and as a person. The holistic progress card focuses on three key areas. It looks at learning progress, means how the child is improving over time and not just where the child stands today. So instead of asking how much did the child score, we must ask how much has the child grown. Second focus of this HPC is on individual strength. So every child is good at something. Some are good at speaking, some are good at drawing, some are good at organizing, some are good at helping others. thinking logically. So HPC helps identify and record this strength. So the child is known not only by marks, but by the abilities what they have. And the third focus of holistic progress card is developmental goal. So HPC also looks at the confidence, the responsibility the child takes, the teamwork child shows in a group activities, the discipline, the emotional maturity, because education is not only about building brains, it is also about building character. So in simple words, the traditional report card tells parents that what the child has scored, but the holistic progress card tells parents who the child is becoming. This is why HPC is not just an assessment tool, it is a developmental tool. And this is how we move from exam driven education to growth driven education. So this is about the holistic progress card, where we are talking about the learning progress, we are talking about the individual strength of the children and the developmental growth through the report card, through the progress card, which we are giving to the parents. Next, let's move. Now we understand the holistic progress card. Now let us understand the true nature of this progress card. So the holistic progress card is a comprehensive record of child's learning and development. So the word comprehensive is very important. So it means complete and not partial. So our traditional progress card shows only one side of the child, that is the academics part. But HPC shows the full picture of the child. And that is why we say the holistic progress card goes beyond the academics. Second, it captures the academic learning in everyday classroom situation. So earlier, we mainly assess children during their unit tests, their term exams, their final exam. But real learning happens every day in the classroom. And so HPC captures academic learning through classroom discussions, the worksheets they solve, the activities they perform, the projects they do in the class, in the school, the presentations, the practical work. For example, a child may not be write perfect answers in the exams, but explains concept very clearly in the class. So this ability was invisible, but now HPC makes it a learning, make this learning of a child visible. Next is recognizing development of skills, attitudes, and values. So education is not only about the subject, it is all about how the child behaves, how the child thinks, how the child treats others, and HPC recognizes skills like communications, collaboration, creativity, then critical thinking. It also recognizes attitudes and values like respect, responsibility, honesty, empathy. So we are not only teaching lessons, we are shaping human beings. The next point about holistic progress card is based on continuous observation, evidence collection, and reflection. So it is not based on one exam paper. So when it is said continuous, so what we have to do, we have to observe daily. What evidence we are collecting from their classwork and activities, what we reflect upon as a teachers. So this means assessment becomes ongoing and not occasional. So HPC, so assessment becomes ongoing, it becomes not stressful, it becomes developmental, and also non-judgmental if it is ongoing and evidential based, and it is incorporated in our daily teaching learning observation through our daily learning observations. So if we observe children continuously to support their growth. Next point is about to focus on progress over time, not comparison with others. So if you look at our earlier report cards, so this traditional report card compared children with each other. Like you got rank 1, you got rank 2, I had rank 3. But HPC compares the children with their own past performance. So we ask, is the child improving from where they started? A child moving from 40 marks to 60 marks is showing great growth, even if another child moves from 85 to 90. So HPC values improvement and not comparison. So in simple words, the traditional report card tells us who is ahead, but the holistic report card tells us who is growing. This is how HPC supports the healthy learning culture in the school. Now let's move on and reflect on our current assessment systems. So for many years, we followed the traditional assessment practices. And these practices have helped us in some way, but they also have serious limitations. So in simple words, traditional assessment gives us only the partial picture of the child, and it shows only one side of learning and not the full story. So what are the limitations of this traditional way of assessing children? So it was emphasizing more on rote learning and memorization. So they test how well the child has memorized, how well the child can reproduce answers during the exam. So what happens then? Many children learn answers by heart without understanding, and they may score well but forget everything after the exam. So we are often measuring memory and not meaningful learning when we used to enter only the exam scores in our traditional report card. Again, our traditional report cards was reliance on only one-time written exams. So most of our judgment about the child was depending on one unit test or one term exam or only one final exam. But the child performance can change due to health, stress, fear, family issues. So is it fair to decide a child ability based on one day? So learning is a journey and not one day event. So this was again a limitation because we used to put marks based on a child's written exam. And another third limitation was focus on final answers and not learning process. So traditional exam mainly checks, is the final answer correct? They do not check how the child, what strategy the child used, where the child got confused. But as teacher, we know understanding the process is more important than only the answers. Because if process is right, improvement will follow. So as a result, because of these uh, limitations of traditional assessment, we have ignored many important aspects of children's growth. First is child's effort and engagement. So you must have seen that many children try hard, ask questions, participate actively in the classroom. But when it comes to exam and when we look at the report card, they score less. So the report card does not show the effort, it only shows the marks. So that was the result of our traditional way of testing children. Second impact was progress over time was not shown, was overlooked. So if the child moves from 30 to 55, that was a great improvement, but the report card only shows 55 marks. So it hides the growth journey of the child. Another thing which was overlooked by this traditional assessment was development of skills. To skills like communication, teamwork, creativity, problem solving, which were essential for life, but they were rarely visible in our mark sheet. And the fourth thing was growth in attitudes and values was also not observed by the teachers. So qualities like respect, responsibility, honesty, empathy, these are all central part for the character building. But traditional exams do not measure them. So the problem is not that exams are wrong. The problem is that exams alone are not enough. And that is why we need a better, more complete system of assessment. And this is exactly why the holistic progress card was introduced, because every child is more than a mark, and every teacher deserves a better way to understand their learners. Now that we understood why traditional assessment is limited, now let us understand the guiding principles of holistic progress card. Let us move on to the next slide. So these principles tell us how assessment should look in a child-friendly education system. The first and the most important principle is each child is assessed in relation to their own learning journey and not in comparison with others. What does this mean? Can I have some answers in the chat box? What does this point mean? What is this principle of HPC? How do you interpret this principle? That each child is assessed in relation to their own learning journey and not in comparison with others. Can I have answers in the chat box? Teachers, are you typing? Capability differs. Yes, Rajni Kumar. Every child is unique and he or she has his own strength and weaknesses. Okay. Yes, yes. So this means that in the learning journey, in a previous traditional way of assessing children, we use even the parents and education system used to compare. But through this revised HPC, we have to assess the individual child journey and not to compare with others. So this means we should stop asking who is first and who is last. But instead, we should ask how this child improved from where they have started. So a child who moves from 40 marks to 60 marks has grown more than a child who moves from 85 to 90. So HPC values growth and not the rank. Next, HPC principle is to look at the continuous growth. So it recognizes what progress the child has already made and what potential the child has for further development. So assessment becomes a tool for improvement, not for punishment. So we are not labeling children, but we are guiding them through this continuous observation for this HPC. And the third thing is about identifying and nurturing individual strength. So every child has their unique strength, as somebody has mentioned in the chat box. Everybody has their own strength, their own challenges, their own weaknesses. Everybody has their differentiated qualities. So every child's unique strength has to be valued. So some children may shine in academics, they may shine in sports, they may be very good with art, they may have very good leadership qualities, some may be very good with problem solving. So HPC helps us to identify this strength and nurture these strengths. So instead of only fixing the weaknesses, we also build on what the child does well. So this builds confidence and motivation in the classroom. So again, HPC is a form of motivation for the child because we are giving the appreciation for the strength along with fixing their weaknesses. The fourth point is early identification of areas that needs support. So HPC helps us notice learning gaps early. So if a child is struggling with reading, writing, or any kind of behavior issues, we do not wait till the final exam. So we support the child on the time, and this happens through your daily observations in the classroom. So this is like early medical treatment, which is easier and more effective. The fifth point is about assessment from the multiple perspective. So HPC does not depend only on one teacher's view. So it looks at the child from many angles. It ensures a holistic view of a child because a child may behave differently in classroom, but the child may behave differently on the playground. A child may behave differently when there is a group work happening in the classroom. So all these views together give a true picture of that child. And that's why in schools, we maintain a lot of anecdotal records of the children to measure, observe their behavior, whether it is in the classroom, playground, or any kind of activities you are conducting. So this will help the teachers to assess the children from the multiple perspective when we are getting views from the other teachers as well. And the sixth point is about the sixth principle for HPC is inputs from teachers, students, parents, and peers. So it is a 360-degree assessment of a children. The HPC believes in the 360-degree principle for assessing the children. So assessment is not only done to a child, it is done with the child. So inputs are taken from the teachers, students, from students how it is done through their self-reflection, parents, as well as from peers. Wherever there is possible, HPC is suggesting school to take the peer assessments also. So this makes assessment more balanced and meaningful. And holistic progress card treats every child as a growing individual and not as a number in a list. So this is how assessment becomes supportive and not stressful. And this is the foundation of truly child-friendly education system. So these are the very important key principles of holistic progress card. Now let us see clearly the difference between the traditional report card and the holistic progress cards. So let us move on to the next slide. Yeah, thank you. So this comparison difference between this traditional report card and the holistic report card will help us to understand that HPC is not just a new format, but it is a new way of thinking about assessment. So traditional report card mainly gives marks and grades. It tells parents your child scored 65 marks in math, but it does not explain what the child can do well, where the child needs help. And that's why HPC uses descriptive feedback. It tells parents that your child can solve basic problem confidently but needs support in word problems. So this guides improvement and not judgment. So the traditional reports cards talks about marks and grade, whereas HPC gives a descriptive feedback about child progress in particular subject. The second difference is subjects in isolation versus developmental domains. So traditional report cards looks at subjects separately as math, science, English, and only through marks. But HPC looks at the developmental domains such as cognitive development, social skill development, emotional growth of the children, physical development of the children, because real learning is connected and not divided into marks. So this is how the traditional progress card was talking about only the marks in the academic subject, whereas the HPC is giving you the picture about the developmental domains of the children. The third difference is exam and the learning process. So traditional report card emphasizes exams and the written work, and it focuses only on the final answers. But HPC emphasizes how the child is learning. It values class participation, the project work the child is submitting, the activities the child is doing in the classroom, the problem solving steps the child is showcasing in the classroom. Because the process, and because this only builds the helps teachers to understand what the process, how the child is understanding. So this is how the traditional report card only emphasizes on the exam and the written work, but whereas the HPC uh, focuses on the learning processes, how the child is building their understanding. The fourth difference is that the traditional report card gives a snapshot like a photograph taken on a one day. But HPC shows a video of growth over time. So it shows where the child started and how the child is improving. So growth matters more than one day performance, and this is shown through the HPC. The fifth difference between a traditional report card and the HPC is the comparison versus reflection and growth. So traditional report card often leads to ranking, the comparison, the competition, and parents ask who is first in the class. But what HPC encourages? HPC encourages reflection, self-improvement, and this becomes very important for us and to know how the child is growing further. So HPC encourages on the self-reflection and also the self-improvement by the children. The sixth difference is highlights the traditional reports card owner highlights what is right and what is wrong. But HPC guides what can improve next. It turns assessment into a roadmap and not as a verdict. So the traditional report card judges the child, whereas the holistic progress card guides the child. And this is why HPC supports learning and not fear. So this was the difference between a traditional report card and the HPC, where the traditional report card gives you the scores of the children, but HPC will guide the students' growth. Right? So now let us understand an important shift that is happening in education all over the world. Let's move on to the next slide. Yeah. So now there is an important shift that is happening globally. So earlier we believed that learning happens mainly inside the classroom and during the exam. But today it's education recognizes that something much deeper, like learning is continuous. So education today recognizes that learning is continuous and it does not happen only during the class period or the exam time. So children learn every day through their classroom discussion, through group activities, through their projects work, through their games and real life example. So a child is learning even when working in a group or solving a problem with friends. So learning is a daily process and not a once in a term event. So now this is the shift which is happening. So HPC is talking about the continuous observation of learning. The second shift is learning is multidimensional. So earlier we focused mainly on academic learning. Now we understand that learning is multidimensional. So it includes academic growth, social development, emotional maturity, and physical development. So a child is not just a brain walking into the classroom, but a child is a thinking, feeling, and social human being. So education must develop the whole child and not just the memory. So this is again a shift from traditional to this HPC format, that is the learning should be multidimensional. And the third shift about this is about learning has to be child-centric. So today's education has to be child-centric. So this means we must respect that every child learns at a different pace, every child has different interests, and every child has different abilities. So we no longer expect that all children to learn in the same way, at the same speed, on the same day. So education now adapts to the child and not the child to the system. So that's why the child-centered approaches through differential learning are being implemented in the classroom. And that is again a shift which we see nowadays in our modern classrooms. So if learning has changed, then assessment must also change. So we cannot use the old assessment method for a new understanding of learning. And that is why assessment today must reflect three things: the learning process, the progress made over time, and the final product or the outcome. So what is this learning process? So again, how we are not looking at the final answer. So we must see how the child thinks, how the child attempts, and how the child is improving. So this is the learning journey of a child. So as a teacher, as a educators, we have to not just look at the final answer, what the child scores, but also we must look into how the child thinks, how the child attempts any kind of project or a task, and how the child is showing improvement. Also, we must look at the progress where the child made over time. So we must track where the child has started and how far the child has come. So growth matters more than one-time performance. And the final product or the outcome. Yes, the outcomes are very important. So they are not only one part of the story, but they should be the entire story of the child. So this shift in educational thinking is the foundation of holistic progress guide. Because when learning is continuous, multidimensional, and child-centric, assessment must also be continuous, holistic, and child-focused. And that is exactly what the holistic progress card is designed to do. It aligns assessment with how the children actually learn. So this is a bigger. So what the learning changes are happening in the classroom, the holistic progress card also keeps that learning in mind, and accordingly it aligns the assessment in HPC. So this shift is also seen in a holistic progress cards. Now let's look at the people how this holistic progress card will help the education community or the entire learning community. Can we move on to the next slide? So how this HPC will be useful for the teachers, to the students, to the parents, and as a school system. So let us see how each one will be benefited with this HPC. So for teachers, the holistic progress card is a powerful teaching tool because it helps teachers to observe students' learning behavior and engagement in a daily classroom activities. It also helps teachers to track progress across different developmental areas and not just academics. And it also provides meaningful and timely feedback instead of only marks. So HPC supports better teaching decisions and not just reporting. Now let us see how it helps students. For students, HPC is like a mirror. It helps students to reflect on their own learning experiences, recognize their strength and the areas of improvement, develop ownership and their learning, and they start learning for the growth. So this helps students to understand their learning growth by self-reflecting, by recognizing their strength and the areas of improvement, and also taking ownership of their learning when the teachers give them the feedback. Now let's see how it helps the parents. So for parents, HPC becomes the window into the child's real development. So it helps parents to understand that child's growth beyond marks, support learning at home more effectively, and have meaningful discussions during PTMs and not only about marks. So parents teachers meeting becomes about a progress and not about the pressure which usually generates through our traditional report cards. And now as a school, how this HPC will benefit. So for a school systems, the HPC becomes a planning tool. So it helps school to identify uh, students need and require support system, plan targeted interventions and enrichment programs for the children, and strengthen their teaching learning practices in the school. So HPC improves not only the individual learning but overall school quality. So in simple words, the holistic progress card is not just a report card; it is a shared growth tool for the teachers, students, parents, and the schools. And this is how assessments become a partnership and not a punishment system. So everybody is involved in the HPC. So this is how a holistic report card or holistic progress card helps students, teachers, parents, and the school as a system. So let's move on to the next slide. So far, what we have discussed about how it helps parents, what were the limitations of traditional reports card, uh, what is the difference between the traditional report card and the holistic progress card, and what exactly is holistic progress card. So let us now come to this question. Which statement best reflects a teacher who has truly internalized the holistic progress card approach? There are four options. I assess students more frequently now. I record more evidence for reporting. I observe students differently during teaching. I give detailed feedback at the end of the term. Can you type your answers in the chat box? Option D. At the end of the term, I give detailed feedback at the end of the term. Read the options, ma'am. Okay, some you are saying D. Can I have many other responses also? Teachers, Pallavi, Rajni Kumar is saying C. I observe students differently during teaching. Okay. Okay. B. So they're saying I record more evidences for reporting. Sonu Kaushal, B. Okay. Prashant Gaur, B. Okay. Okay. Any other guesses? Shalini Kumar, C. Okay. 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 Let us reveal the answer. Yes, the answer is C. So I observe students differently during teaching. So I observe each and every children during my teaching learning practices. Okay. So with this, let us move on to the next slide, and which is very important, where we are going to cover about the important domains of holistic progress card. So it is a well-structured document. So if you read this document carefully, it is explaining you how the assessment has to be carried out in the schools. So a holistic progress card recognizes that the child's development is multidimensional. So it means that the child does not grow only in academics, but a child grows in many areas at the same time. And that is why HPG captures progress across different key domains and not just the marks. So let us understand what are these key domains about in the HPC. So first domain is cognitive or academic domain. and is about how the students understand the concepts, how they think logically or not, or are they applying learning in a real life situation. So it is not only about remembering answers, but that this domain looks into the cognitive development of a child and not only at remembering the answers. So, how the child understands, how the child thinks, and how the child applies this learning in the real life is all about the cognitive academic domain. Second domain, the HPC is listed, is about the social and emotional domain, and it looks how well the child functions in society by building relationship, showing empathy, and managing emotions. The third domain which we see in HPC is physical and health domain, and it looks at the motor skill, physical fitness, and the healthy habits. The fourth domain of HPC is creative and aesthetic domain. So this domain looks at the imagination, the expression, the appreciation of art and beauty, the creative aspect of the children. Fifth domain is talking about ethical, moral, and values. And this domain looks at the responsibility, the honesty, and the respect for others. Sixth domain is about the life skills and dispositions. And this domains looks at the real life readiness such as problem solving skills, adaptability, and initiatives. So in simple words, if you look at the HPC, the holistic progress card sees the child as a whole person and not just a marks machine. So this is how HPC supports complete development and not just the academic success. So it is the holistic progress card and not only the academics. So this was the domains, the 6 domains of HPC. Now let us go into the details of all these domains. So the first domain is cognitive or the academic domain. And this domain focuses on how does the child think, understand, and apply learning. So this domain demonstrates how the students are understanding the concepts. So we do not judge the learning only by written answers, but we, as a teachers, we have to observe the classroom discussions, the activities, the group work, when to understand the cognitive understanding of the children. For example, suppose suppose a child explains fractions correctly using a paper folding or using a real life example like a pizza, then it shows a true understanding even before we test them in the exam. So this is what, as a teacher, we have to see how the child demonstrates the understanding of concepts in the classroom. And this could be done through the observation, through our daily observation in the teaching learning practices. Next, we as a teachers have to observe how the students applies learning to a real life situation. Can the child use learning, classroom learning outside the textbook? Let me give you an example. Suppose, is the child using those addition and subtraction calculation when they are asking for the change in a canteen or when they are in the market? Are they applying the science concept while they're talking about weather? Are they using grammar concept when they're speaking confidently? So this is what we have to see, how the classroom learning is transferring to the real life. Next, to also note down the cognitive understanding of the children or the academic development of the children, we also have to see how the child develops thinking skills. How the child reasoning out in the classroom? Is the child analyzing the certain things in the classroom? Is child making connections in the classroom? So this will help us to understand the thinking skill development of the children. For example, when a child says in the classroom, oh, this story is similar to the previous chapter which I have learned earlier, because the author is the same, or the poet is the same, or the theme is the same. If the child brings these connections, means the child is thinking. So the child is bringing these ideas, connecting this idea, and this is also a higher order thinking skills. So we have to observe how the child is developing this thinking skill to measure their cognitive understanding, to understand their cognitive development. Next, we have to see how curious the child is, how the child is asking questions. Is the child curious in the classroom? So when the child is curious in the classroom, it is a sign of deep learning. So for example, you bought something in the classroom and asked children, and just brought this thing, and students are curious to know, ma'am, why ma'am has got this in the classroom? What ma'am is going to do with this? Why does this, or something experiment you are done? So why this is happening? Why the color change is happening in this experiment? Why the plastic bottle is not sinking in the water? Why the pen is sinking in the water? So this is what a question the child is thinking and is becoming curious, and this is how we have to observe whether the child is questioning in the classroom, and when the child is questioning in the classroom, the child is curious. And HPC values this curiosity in the classroom. So as a teacher, we have to see how the children are showing curiosity. Are they asking questions in the class or not? Next, we also have to see their use of language, the symbols they use, as well as their representations in the classroom. So the child express their understanding in many ways, either through talking to you or speaking to you, either by written work or through the diagrams or through the chart making, or sometimes we give them the model making. So how the child is the child able to explain the science concept using a drawing? So this is also a cognitive learning which we have to look at. So not only through the written exam, but how the child is expressing the concepts, the learning what they had, either through by telling a story or by using a mind map or a concept map or by drawing a chart or through a presentation. So this is how we have to look at the children understanding, how they express their understanding through language, symbols, and representations. So the cognitive domain in HPC means we assess not only answers, but thinking as well as. So not only their memory, but their understanding. Not only marks, but their meaning. And this is how HPC improves the quality of learning and not just the quantity of marks. So when we have to assess this academic domain of the children, we have to look at whether the children are curious, how they are presenting themselves, how they are explaining the concept, are they thinking in the classroom, are they solving problem and taking the learning from the classroom to the real life. So this will all help you to understand the cognitive understanding of the children, the cognitive development of the children. Now let's move on to the next domain. the very important part of the child development, that is social and emotional domain. So we may teach math and science, but children also come to school to learn how to live with others, how to live with themselves. And this domain, the social and emotional domains, looks into it. The child interacts with people and how they understand and manage their emotions. And this skills also decides the success in life as much as the marks also decides. So what is that? How do we measure the social and emotional domain of the children? When HPC is suggesting to measure this. So we have to observe, does the child builds positive relationship? Does the child talks politely to the classmates? Does the child respect teachers and helpers? Does the child makes friends easily? So this is how will give us the picture whether the child is building positive relationships or not. For example, suppose a child includes others in games which they are playing, and this shows that their social maturity. The second thing which we have to demonstrate of the to look at the social and emotional domain of the children is whether the students demonstrate cooperation, sharing, and teamwork. So in group activities, we have to observe, does the child wait for their turn? Do they share materials? Do they work as a team? So this will help you to measure whether they work in a team or not. So you have to observe it very carefully. For example, during a project work, suppose a child who helps others complete the task shows that he has a strong social skills. So he is giving the helping hand to other children to complete the project or the group project. So this also we have to observe as a teachers. Next, we have to see how the children express emotions. So children feel anger, they also feel sadness, they are also excited, which is very normal. What we observe is, can the child express feelings without hurting others? So this is what we have to observe. For example, instead of shouting in the class, if a child says, I am upset because this happened with me. So this shows the emotional control. So we have to see how the children expresses their emotions appropriately. Next, we have to see whether the children show empathy, respect, and sensitivity. So empathy means understanding others' feelings. For example, whether the child comforts a crying classmate or their friend, whether they respect different opinions. Is the child kind to the slower learners? So these are life building quality. So we have to observe whether which children are showing empathy, respect, and sensitivity towards others. Next, we have to also see how the children respond to a feedback and the challenges they face. So we have to observe how the child reacts when you correct them. Are they accepting their mistake? Or they tries again after when you tell them that this is what you have to overcome? Are they trying to overcome their failure? Are they improving after your guidance? So this is also what we have to observe when it comes to when it comes to how they respond to your feedback and challenges. So this shows their emotional strength and their growth mindset. So they open to the feedback, and are they implementing that feedback to improve their performance. So this is also what we have to observe as a teachers. So in HPC, we are not only teaching subject, we are shaping human beings. So because the child who is emotionally balanced, socially responsible will automatically become a better learner. So this was all what we have to observe for the social and emotional development. Now let's move on to the another very important area of a development, that is physical and health domain. So we all know a simple truth. We always say that a healthy body creates a healthy mind. So if a child is tired, unhealthy, or inactive, so learning automatically will suffer. So HPC also looks at how well a child is growing physically and how the child is physically disciplined, and not only academically. So for this, what we have to observe? Whether the child actively participates in physical and movement activities. So, does the child enjoy games period? Does the child participate in PT, yoga, or a dance, or the sports events what you have in the school? Does the child move confidently during the activities? So this is shows how the child is actively participating when it comes to the physical and movement activities. For example, a child who actively joins race in the school and exercises regularly in the school is developing physical confidence. So we also have to see if there are children, whenever there is any PT period, they always say, I have a stomach ache or I have a headache. So as a teacher, we also have to observe which are the students who are always actively participating in these physical activities. Next, we also have to observe their daily habits. Are they washing hands before meal? Are they keep their personal belonging clean? Do they follow safety rules in the class and playground? So this also helps us to understand that physical and health, understand and learn how they are physically and how they keep themselves healthy and hygienic. So many times we see many children. There are children who throw their pencil shavings on the ground in the classroom. But you see the children uses dustbin regularly. There are children who uses these dustbins regularly, and also many times they guide the other children also. And that shows their awareness about hygiene and their responsibility. So this is what we have to observe in the classroom. Next, we have to also see whether they're developing their gross and fine motor skills. So what are the gross motor skills? Any idea about gross motor skills? You can type in the chat box. Age appropriate gross motor skills. Can I have some insights on what do you understand by gross motor skills? Teachers? Development of large muscles, okay. Yes, development, yes. Big movements like running, jumping, and climbing. And fine motor skills are? What are fine motor skills? It is about, okay, lacing, okay, buttoning, writing, drawing, cutting, eye-hand coordination, beading. Yes, very good. Yeah. So also as a teacher, able to make some creative items, pencil holding. Yes, yes, very good. Yes. Pincer grip, lacing. Correct, correct. Yeah. So as a teacher, we also have to see how they are developing their gross and fine motor skill. So, for example, a child who holds a pencil properly or cuts neatly with scissor shows a fine motor skill development. Yeah. Next, as a teachers, we have to see whether they demonstrate coordination, balance, and stamina. So we have to observe, can the child balance while walking in a line? Can they play for some time without getting exhausted? Can they coordinate hands and eyes in a games? So these skills will support them in reading, writing, and sitting attentively in the classroom. So body control also supports their brain control. Buttoning, zipping, tying, shoelace. Yes, Gita ma'am. Yeah. So we have to see how they demonstrate the coordination, the balancing, and the stamina in the school premises. Right? So we have to observe this also when it comes to coordination, balancing, and their stamina. So this also gives us the update about their health. Next, we have to see whether they show awareness of personal well-being and their fitness. So what we have to observe, whether the child understand importance of exercise, whether they choose healthy food when guided, whether they talk about being fit and active. So for example, a child who says exercise keeps us strong, that child is developing a lifelong healthy habits. So again, we have to observe whether the children are aware about their personal well-being and fitness. So HPC remind us we are not only building bright minds, but also we are building the strong bodies, because only a healthy child can become a successful learner. So this was about the physical and health domain, what all we have to see, observe when it comes to physical and health domain. Now let's us move on to a very joyful and colorful domain, that is the creative and aesthetic domain. So this domain focuses on how the children express themselves creatively, because every child may not become a topper in maths, but every child has a potential to be creative in some way. So some children think in numbers, some children think in colors, some children think in music and movement. And HPC gives this space to all this talent in the class school. So what is that we have to observe when it comes to creative and aesthetic side of the children? So whether the children express their idea through art, music, movement, and drama. So to observe this, to see this, what we have to observe as a teachers? Does the child enjoy drawing, coloring, and craft work in the class? Does the child sing, dance, and act in the skits? Does the child uses action and expression while speaking? So this is what we have to observe when it comes to whether they are able to express their ideas through art, music, movement, and drama. So, for example, suppose a child is explaining a story using actions, and sometimes they show some kind of a drawing or a concept map or a mind map, or a drawing of a water cycle. So this is what they are showing their creative expression. So the children who are not able to express in uh, speaking or by writing, if they draw and show you, means they are expressing their understanding through art, craft, or music, or any kind of drama. Also, we have to see, uh, look whether the child appreciates a friend's drawing, means how they appreciate the others' artistic expression. How whether they are understand appreciates the beauty, the creativity of others. So we have to observe which are the children who appreciates the friend's drawing, who are the children who enjoys music and cultural programs. Also, we have to observe and notice which children observe the beauty in nature and also in the art and in their surrounding. So whether these children appreciate the things which they see around, whether they uh, express that feelings through observing these artistic expressions, this beauty around them, the creativity around there, and appreciate others also. That is what, as a teachers, we have to observe to look at this creative and aesthetic side. So, for example, a child is saying that this drawing is very nice. Means this child is developing a aesthetic sensitivity. Also, we have to see whether the children demonstrate originality and imagination. So for this, what we have to observe? We have to observe, does the child gives new ideas? Does the child thinks differently? Does the child can create their own stories, designs, or the solutions? For example, suppose if asked to draw a house, suppose you ask the children to draw a house, and if a child adds a garden or a solar panels or a pets or a kind of a chimney in the house, so that is the imagination that they are working at. So this is also we have to see how they demonstrate their originality and their creative idea, the imagination which are out of box. The other things to observe this creative and aesthetic side of the children, we have to see how they experiment with materials, colors, sounds, and the forms. So we encourage children to explore the mixing colors in art, trying new craft material, creating sounds using objects, and this shows the curiosity and innovation. So, any kind of music they create using certain kind of object, so that is where they are showing their learning. They're showing how they are curious and they want to try something new. So this is all about their creative exploration. Next, we have to see whether they show confidence in sharing their creative work. So we also observe confidence for this domain also. Does the child come forward to sing or present? Do they show their artwork proudly to others? Do they practice without fear of mistakes? And this builds their self-esteem, communication skill, and emotional strength. So this also how they showcase their confidence, though they do small things, but are they confident enough to showcase it to the others? This also we have to observe as a teachers in the classroom. So HPC recognizes that creativity is not an extra thing. It is essential for innovation, confidence, and problem solving. So we are not just preparing children for exam, but we are preparing them for life. So this was all about the creative and the aesthetic domain of the children, which as a teachers, we have to observe whether they are able to think out of box? Are they curious? Are they sharing their creative work? Are they demonstrating, expressing their ideas through their um, art, or through their drawings, or through their craft work, or any kind of storytelling, or any kind of skit? So this is what will reflect their creative and aesthetic side of their personality. Now we come to one of the most important domain, that is the ethical, moral, and value domain. Let's move on to the next domain. Yeah. So this domain answers a very deep questions like how we are teaching children to be successful, or are we only teaching them to be a good human beings. So marks can build careers, but values build character, and character decides how a child uses knowledge in real life. So this is also a very important domain for the teachers to observe. So what is that we have to observe the children when it comes to ethical, moral, and the value domain? So are the children demonstrating honesty, responsibility, and respect? And how do we observe this? Through our daily observation, through their daily behavior, such as, does the child speak the truth? Does the child completes duties sincerely? Child respects teachers, peers, and helpers. So this is how they demonstrate honesty, responsibility, and respect. So if a child admits that I forgot my homework and I will complete it tomorrow, means he is honest. If a child returns a lost pencil to its owner, that is the responsibility. So this is what we have to observe to see whether they are demonstrating this honesty aspect, the responsibility, and the respect to others. Other observation, what as a teachers we have to do, whether the children display fairness and sensitivity in interactions or not. So we have to observe, does the child share material fairly with others? Does the child listens to others? Does the child avoid hurting classmates? And for example, if two students want the same book, and the child says that you can take it first and I will take it later. So this shows that they show that fairness and empathy. So again, as a teachers, we have to look at whether they display fairness and sensitivity in the interactions when they interact with their peer groups. Also, we have to see whether they follow rules and understands what is right and wrong. So we look at whether the child follows classroom rules, whether they stand in line, listens when others speak, and not out of fear, but because they understand it is right thing to do. And this builds inner discipline. Just give me a moment. I'll just Okay, sorry for that interruption. Yeah. So next point is about how the children show care to others, the property what that is there in the school or in the premises, and the environment. So for this, what we have to observe? We have to observe the small daily action like, does the child switch off the lights? Does the child keep the classroom clean? Does the child help a friend who is hurt? There are many more examples. So we have to see how the child takes care of others, whether it is a person or a property or the surroundings. So for example, if a child who picks up a litter from the floor is showing that social responsibility, and he has learned that social responsibility. So this is what, and he cares for the environment. So this is what we have to observe in the class when it comes to the ethical and moral and value domain of the children. Next, we have to see how the children take responsibility for their actions and their decisions. So we have to see that, does the child accept mistakes? Does the child try to correct themselves and learn from the feedback? So if a child says that I spoke loudly, I am sorry, I will improve, this shows their moral growth. So HPC captures not only what the child knows, but also how the child behaves. Because the aim of the education is not only the smart students, but also the good citizen. So through this domain, we have to look at the ethical, moral, and the value development in the students. Now we come to the domain that prepares children not just for the exam, but for the life. And this is the life skill and the disposition domain. Because in real world, uh, success is not only by the marks, but by how children handle problems, the pressure they get, the stress they get, and the changes which are happening around us. So what do we observe? Whether to measure this domain of the children, the life skills and the disposition, whether the students demonstrate problem solving and the decision making skills. For this, what we have to observe, can the child think of a solution or any problem which occurs in the school? Can the child make simple choices responsibly? For example, suppose if a child forgets a notebook and says, I will borrow from a friend and complete the work. So that is a problem solving. So he has that problem solving skill. And if a child chooses to finish homework before playing, that is his decision making. So this is also, as a teachers, we have to observe how they demonstrate problem solving and decision making skill. Then whether they display perseverance and resilience during challenges. We look at how children react to difficulty. So do they give up quickly or do they try it again if they find it difficult? Suppose, for example, if a child struggles with division sums, uh, but keeps practicing instead of saying that I can't do maths. So this shows his resilience. And this domains values efforts and not just only the success, but also the efforts the child is putting into to achieve something. Yeah. Next, the child should show whether the child is showing initiatives and willingness to try new tasks. Does the child volunteer to do something in the school? Does the child attempts new activities without fear? So that is also we have to observe as a teacher. For example, a child who raises a hand to answer, even if unsure, is showing confidence and initiative. And this builds them a lifelong learners. Next, we as a teacher, whether we have to see whether they adapt to the new situation and changes positively. So as a teachers, we have to see whether the children respond to the changes, like if there is a new teacher in the classroom, how they behave. When there is a new classroom rule, are they following it or not? When there is a new classmate in their class, how they are behaving. What changes, are they accepting it positively or not? So this is what we have to observe, whether they are adapting to the situation or the changes we are taking place around in them. So suppose if a child adjusts calmly and cooperates, this shows that they are adaptable and they are, and this skill, this adaptability is again a very important 21st century skills. So we have faced a lot of, during a pandemic, uh, we had this challenge of adapting when they started coming to the school in a live classroom. So this is what we have to see, whether they are adapting to the new situation and the changes positively. Next, we have to see whether they are working independently or as well as they are working collaboratively or not. So we have to observe, can a child complete work on their own? And also we have to see whether the child work in a team respectfully. So if you observe any group work, you have to see whether the child listens or shares ideas and supports peers in developing or coming up with the new ideas, means the child is cooperative and developing those leadership skills. So through this domain, HPC helps us to answer, is the child becoming a confident problem solver or only the content learner? So because the future needs children who can think, adapt, collaborate, and persist, and not only the score. So again, this becomes a very important domain for the teachers to observe, because these are the life skills which the children are going to carry throughout their life. Okay, now let us look at the biggest shift in the holistic progress card. That the holistic progress card is moving from marks to the descriptors. So now let me give you an example. Suppose there are two students, student A and student B. They both score 35 marks. But if I say child A, student A is quite in class, memorizes answers, panics during exams, and the child B asks questions, explains answers orally, makes writing mistakes correct. So what we see here, when these two students score, both the students score marks 35. So marks treated them equally. But descriptors tells us the difference. That is the power of holistic progress card. So marks tells us how much a child scored, focuses on right and wrong answers, represents one exam, one day, often lead to comparison and ranking, and give very limited feedback. If we say a child scores 62 out of 100, so as a teacher, we know that this number does not tell us how the child is learning, why he or she made mistakes, what support he or she needs next. Marks tells us only about the performance and not about the life journey, learning journey. But the descriptors, if we describe the learning journey of a child in a progress card, and through the descriptor, so that will describe what the child can do. It will focus on learning behaviors and processes, show progress over time, encourage reflection and self-improvement, give them clear actionable feedback, emphasizable growth and development, instead of saying that a child scores 62. So if we say a child understands key concept, participates actively in the class discussions, and is steadily improving in applying her learning, so now this is useful for teachers, parents, and most importantly, the child. And that is why HPC values how children learn and not just what they write in exam. Marks just a moment, but descriptors supports their journey. So now there is a change, there will be a change from marks to the descriptor in the holistic progress card. Right? So not only along with the marks, we have to describe the journey of a child, the learning journey of a child using this holistic progress card, so that it gives the growth journey for the children actionable, so that they have the correct feedback where they went wrong and where they have to improve on. Okay, let's move on to the next slide. Okay, now. So here is a question. How does the holistic progress card transform the way the student growth is understood and supported? Encourages reflective learning beyond exam score, encourages reflective learning through standardized testing, encourages reflective learning by competitive grade ranking, and encourages reflective learning using annual summative feedback. Yes, the option is A. Encourages reflective learning beyond the exam score. Okay, thank you so much for the answer. Let us move on to the next slide. And here is your real life, real classroom situation through a case study. So which many of us can immediately relate to. So this is the case study from Sunrise Primary School, which works with the children from pre-primary to class 2. So the case study is, I will read the case study for all of you. So Sunrise Primary School catering to children from pre-primary to class 2 observed that traditional methods of assessment were not appropriate for young learners. Worksheet, written test, and marks failed to capture students' curiosity, play-based learning, communication skills, emotional development, and social behavior. Some children were confident speakers and problem solvers during activity, but struggled with writing tasks, while others completed worksheet correctly but found it difficult to interact with peers. Teachers and parents often equated learning with written output, which led to stress and unrealistic expectation for children at an early age. The school recognized the need for an assessment approach that respected the developmental needs of young children and focused on learning through play, interaction, and exploration. So what is the challenge faced by the school? Through this case study, what is the challenge faced by the school? If we'll shifting to, so what the main challenge faced by this school was about the traditional assessment methods like worksheet, written test, marks, where which was not working with their young children. So because of this traditional assessment, what did they miss to capture? What did they miss to capture? So this transformation to cognitive approach, student-centered teaching learning process, okay. So because of this traditional assessment, they miss to capture students' curiosity, the playway learning, communication skill, emotional development, and also the social behavior. So what did these teachers observe? So some children spoke confidently. There were the problem solvers in the classroom during the activities. They used to ask questions. They used to explore idea. And there were children who struggled with writing and could not complete worksheet. At the same time, there were other children who completed worksheet correctly, scored well on paper, but found it difficult to interact with peers, hesitated to speak, struggled with teamwork and sharing. So what was the impact on the children and parents? Because of this, what was the impact? Because the assessment mainly focused on the written output, the parents started equating learning with worksheet. Teachers felt pressured uh, sh- to show their written evidences, and children began to feel stress at a very young age. So unrealistic expectations were placed on children who were still developing. So learning started feeling like a race and not a joyful process. So now uh, this was the case. So what did the school understood? So they did the gap analysis. So they had this kind of case in the school where the teachers were using the traditional assessment like worksheet and all. So they did the gap analysis. So what was the gap analysis? Can we change the slide? So they did the gap analysis to see that what was happening, what should really ideally should happen, and how do they bridge this gap. So to address these concerns, the school introduces the holistic progress card, which was specifically designed for the foundational stage, and uh, and how this HPC bridged the gap. So they observed children in everyday classroom situation. They documented learning through continuous observation. They focused on multiple developmental domains such as language and communication, early numeracy and cognition, social and emotional development. All those domains they have observed. And the grades and marks were replaced with a simple descriptors. And this approach of school emphasized that developmental readiness and children learn when they are ready. So individual pace, no unhealthy comparison, joyful learning, learning through play and exploration, and then assessment became a supportive process and not a judgment in that school. So then they plan for the implementation. So they identified the gap, what they have seen in the school, the challenge, what they have seen in the school. They identified the gap by implementing the HPC, doing the observation for all the domains, using the not only the marks but also the descriptors in their progress cards. So how they plan to implement? Can we move on to the next slide? Yeah. So the implementation of holistic report card began with a focused orientation program for the early childhood teachers. Then the teachers were trained on the observation-based assessment, age-appropriate documentation, then understanding the developmental milestones. And the teachers were also encouraged to observe children in natural learning situation. And also teachers collected evidences through anecdotal observation notes, photographs of the classroom activities, children work samples, short reflection notes, and all this record were periodically on a daily basis they were tracking it. So this encouraged the talk about their work, choices, and explain and helping, and they help each other's thinking and expression what was working for them. So this Also for the parents, they also called a orientation meeting for the parents. So this was their implementation. And what was the outcome of this HPC implementation? So after 2 academic terms of using the holistic progress card, the school observed positive and visible change in the learning and the classroom culture, and the children became more confident and expressive. Student participation increased without fear of failure, and student willingness to try new activities also improved. So teachers could uh, better each child strengths, their needs, and their learning style. So this improved planning of meaningful, inclusive, and engaging activity. And also the parents started appreciating, they started communication, independence, and social development of the students. They reduce anxiety related to marks, comparison, academic pressure, and overall the focus shifted from how much the child writes to how the child learns and grow. So this was how the school has studied the case, observed the case, did the gap analysis, they then implemented, and as an outcome they have seen the positive results. So that gap analysis was correct. When they put the into practice by implementing, they could see the positive results in the school. Okay, let's move on to the next slide. So this case study clearly shows that the holistic progress card is especially effective at the foundational stage, where learning is developmental, experiential, and the play-based. So at this stage, the children learn best through play, exploration, interaction, and hands-on activities, and not through formal tests and written exam. So by replacing traditional testing with systematic observation and descriptive feedback, the school was able to create a safe, nurturing, and inclusive learning environment. And most importantly, the HPC ensured that every child's growth was recognized at their own pace, without pressure, comparison, or fear of failure. So in the early years, if it reinforces assessment should guide learning, celebrate progress, and protect the joy of the children. And that's exactly what the holistic progress card helps us to achieve. Now let's move on to the CBSE score framework indicators, the performance indicators which are given, which are directly linked with the HPC based assessment of skills and competency. So, so when we look at these indicators, we have to see how well a school assesses students' skills and competencies using the holistic progress cards. So it has been divided into 4 levels. So it's showing the school journey from the starting stage to the best stage. So level 1 is about inceptive, which is a beginning stage. The school have just started or it is at its basic level. So if the school has guidelines for assessments are available, the performance indicators are like guidelines for assessment are available in the school. Schools have adopted the HPC format provided by the board. Assessment is mainly done by the class teachers alone, and focus is only on recording performance, not deep analysis. Means this is a minimum compliance layer for the school if they are just started with the HPC implementation. But still, they are still not into the whole fully implementation of HPC, though they have the guidelines for assessment. Then the level 2 is the transient level, where the schools are learning and improving, and the describe the indicators of these levels are Teachers are trained to use HPC. More than one teacher assesses skill. Assessment is done through project, group work, role play, portfolios, and activities. Records are maintained, updated, and tracked regularly. Students show at least 10% progress everywhere. So this is again at this stage also school shifts from marks to observation skill has this indicator shows that the school has moved from the marks to the observational skills uh, as suggested by the HPC. And if this is seen in the school, means they are at the level 2, that is the transient level when it comes to the HPC implementation. The school which can be considered under level 3, which is the stable level, well-established level, where the assessment is meaningful and collaborative. The indicators or the parameters which describe this level are: the most teachers are competent in assessment standards, skills are assessed collaboratively across subjects and streams, self-assessment and peer assessments are visible, digital records are maintained, students show at least 20% progress yearly. Progress is discussed with parents during PTMs, and parent feedback is recorded. So these are the indicators which shows that the school is at level 3. If school is doing all these things, means the school is at level 3. The school is dynamic if they have these parameters in place. Like assessment drives quality learning. Schools has its own curricular, pedagogical, and assessment policy aligned. Teachers assesses cognitive and affective and psychomotor domains. Assessment is continuous, comprehensive, and ongoing. HPC includes self-peer teachers, means 360-degree inputs. Digital AI-based tools are used to track growth. Data is shared with the parents, and it is used to identify the strengths and weaknesses of the school. School uses data for the targeted interventions. Students show at least 30% progress every year. So if this is met by the school, means the school is at the dynamic level, means it is at the best practices. So at this stage, assessment becomes a tool for improvement and not for the judgment in the school. As schools move from level 1 to level 4, means assessment shifts from recording marks to supporting growth through HPC. So as a school, these indicators are already published in the SCORE framework, the guide, the handbook, and this can be referred when you are looking at the assessment, what you are doing in your schools. So let us conclude now that the HPC helps us to, if you look at all what we have discussed so far, or before that, do you have any questions? Okay, how does HPC helps teachers balance syllabus completion? So, ma'am, syllabus is not an excuse, but the how we will align the syllabus, because the syllabus is mapped with the HPC competencies and the outcomes. So the syllabus is planned as per the grade level, the age level, and the competencies and the outcomes. If you see in the HPC handbook, it is mapped with the syllabus. If you pick up those competencies and pick up those outcomes, what you have to achieve after teaching a particular concept, I don't think there will be any time crunch for teaching the syllabus in the classroom. And also aligning your teaching learning curriculum with the HPC implementation, the competency development, as well as the skill development to achieve those outcomes. So already, suppose for this cognitive domain, there are around 23 competencies which have been defined. And these competencies are aligned with your syllabus. So within the time frame, what you have to plan your syllabus in such a way that you are meeting those competencies. Alongside, you are looking at the growth of the child. You are looking at the not only the marks but also the growth of the child, not from the examination point of view to teach the syllabus and appear for the exam, but you are looking at the competency development of the children. Yes, have I answered your question? Sometimes HPC can become very verbose for the teachers. No, see, this document is, I understand this is a very lengthy document, but how we have to comprehend it in a such a way that it becomes, we are correctly implementing it. Right? It is a comprehensive document, but in a school, if you have teachers group, if you divide the content of that HPC handbook with every teacher, few pages a teacher A takes, few pages a teacher B takes, and each one comprehends their pages and share with your school teachers, it becomes very understandable and it becomes very easy to know what a HPC is talking about. Right, sir or ma'am? Knowing how do we go ahead with writing practice in early years. So at every stage, there is every syllabus, the levels are being defined or the competencies are defined at what stage the writing has to go. So we understand there are slow learners, but with practice and with your consistent efforts, the writing will also be developed in the early child foundational stage. Okay. Uh, Again, we will have a question answer round at the end of the session. So let us conclude. So HPC helps us to look at the children as learners in progress, each growing at their own space in their own way. So this is exactly what quality education, which is we were talking about, sustainable development goal, stands for: inclusive, equitable education that supports lifelong learning. So when we change the way we assess our children, we change the way they experience learning. So from fear to confidence, from comparison to growth, from marks to meaning, that is the real purpose of holistic progress card. So this is what it is, holistic progress card. It is, there is no question of fear. The students will develop. If we correct them at every stage, at every on their learning journey, if you show their growth, if you show them the meaning of learning, how it is relevant in real life, so that will help the children to learn better and grow as a lifelong learners. Okay. Okay, let's move on to the next slide. So before we close, here are the important updates that every CBSE school must act upon. So this is the SCOF is mandatory. Who is this for? So this applies to all the CBSE schools across the country and all the boards. What should school prepare for? School need to prepare over 1,500 plus document and evidences as per the detailed SCOR framework handbook. This covers every domain, standard and subdomain of the framework. When to submit? The final date for submission is December 31st, 2025, which was in the previous year. And school are encouraged to start early so that by end of the year they submit whatever is required by the SCOR framework. What exactly need to be submitted? The school must upload two key components: the complete SCOR framework self-assessment and a well-structured self-improvement plan based on their finding. Where to submit? So submissions are to be made on the official SCOR framework portal, and you will log in using your LOC user ID and password. How will CBSE inspection occur? So after submission, the peer assessor team will be assigned for your school, and this team will physically visit your school to verify the documentation, interact with stakeholders, and assess overall implemented. So SCOP is not a compliance task, it is a opportunity for your school to introspect, innovate, and institutionalize excellence. So start from your preparation for the next academic year from today, and because quality is a journey and not a destination. So this is what SCOP framework is about, and what it all requires. Now that we know SCOP framework submission is mandatory, and the self-assessment is evidence driven. So school must upload more than these documents. Yeah. So now CBSE conducts inspection for a randomly selected 5% of the school every year to assess their compliance and implementation of SCOP framework standards. So, and if a school requests an inspection or a re-evaluation, CBSE may also conduct one to verify progress or provide feedback. So when a school is looking to renew or extend its affiliation with CBSE, the inspection will also consider the SCOP self-assessment as a part of process. So what is the purpose of this CBSE inspection? The primary aim of inspection is not just to evaluate, it's just to promote their self-improvement. The focus will be process-oriented and on a long-term quality improvement for the school. Duration of inspection is continuous and ongoing. And the target group for CBSE SCOP inspection is all school, because this inspection process applies to all schools that are using SCOP framework for self-assessment, including both CBSE and non-CBSE schools. Then support during the inspection. During the inspection, the school will receive a detailed self-improvement descriptor, which will help them understand their strength and areas for growth. And CBSE also offers capacity building initiatives that guide school through the process, helping them improve in the areas like leadership, pedagogy, and community outcome. And what will be the outcome of this inspection? The inspection will be the tool for growth. It will encourage school to get specific goals and develop roadmap for their improvement. So instead of a simple rating system, the process focuses on academic actionable feedback and the growth opportunity. So this CBSE SCOP framework inspection are not just about the compliance, they are about setting a vision for continuous improvement and fostering a growth culture within your school. So I should say you should start preparing early. View this inspection as a catalyst for positive change. So with this, now I hand over to the Luneblaze team for further details. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Archana ma'am, for guiding us all through the intent and the practical application of holistic progress card so clearly. And this session has helped us, see how holistic competency-based assessment supported by the observation, feedback, and reflection can make the student progress more meaningful and visible. So this is exactly where Luneblaze partners with the school. For over 8 years now, we have worked closely with the institutions to translate frameworks like NEP 2020 into effective on-ground practices. Like we support schools in building the holistic assessment systems, developing tools and rubrics, organizing documentation, and aligning reporting with the vision and holistic progress card. So through the structured support, expert guidance, and the ongoing capacity building, we help schools move beyond the compliance towards, the assessment practices that are purposeful, consistent, and sustainable. So on your screen, you can find a direct link to explore the Luneblaze and see how we can support your school's holistic assessment and the score journey. So thank you once again, Archana ma'am, and all the participants for the active engagement. And before we finally go to the conclusion of this webinar, I'd just like to share that we are proudly partnered with over 100 plus schools, on the squad journey, including institutions such as GT Goenka, Chinmay Vidyalaya, Father Regional Group of Schools, along with many other across India. And we are also privileged to support international schools, including Al-Ain Juniors and Indian language schools. And we truly look forward to extending the same level of commitment and support to your school as well, helping you make the squad journey more structured, stress-free, and impactful. So if you'd like to explore how Luneblaze can support your school, we'd be happy to connect. You can reach us out on the number, shared on the screen, right? And we definitely look forward to supporting your school's journey toward quality and continuous improvement. So finally, as we move ahead, we look forward to meet again for another webinar and in the coming month. And we warmly invite you all beforehand to stay tuned for our next webinar in the month of February, where we'll again dive deep into one of the key components of curriculum frameworks, bringing you the practical insights and meaningful takeaways. So thank you so much, everyone, for today. And let's move ahead for the question answers round now. So if there are any questions, any discussions from the participants, please feel free to reach out. You can also, unmute yourselves now and initiate your discussions with the ma'am. In the meantime, there were some questions in the chat section, and ma'am, let's discuss upon that. Like, how often should HPC be updated and discussed with the students and parents?
HPC is a continuous process. As we say, it is a comprehensive and continuous assessment of a children. So if it is a everyday daily observation of children, suppose you have to share the report of a child. So you may call the parents quarterly, may call it half yearly or fortnightly. So it is talking about the children progress. So it has to be done on a daily basis. What are children, how the children are growing, how the children are progressing. So there is no time frame that on this day only I am going to observe this particular child. It is not that on this day, this month is meant for the unit test, or this month is meant for the quarterly exam. So it is on a daily basis. You have to observe the all domains progress of the children through your teaching learning observations, and then make a progress report of these children, how they are growing, how they are improving, taking them as understanding the base level and see how they are progressing in the school. Yes.
So we have another question, how to go ahead with the writing practices in early years.
Yeah, writing, see, if you look at the competencies which are listed in the handbook, so this competency will tell you what are the first competencies which you have to develop. Accordingly, we move on to the writing practices. So students learn through observation. How are these language skills are developed? Speaking, listening, speaking, reading, and writing. Writing comes the last. So when they understand what we are speaking, when they understand what they are reading, when they understand what they are listening, first what they are listening, what they are reading, what they are speaking, and then what they are writing. So this writing skill, as per the competency which are listed in your handbook, you can develop and practice this writing skills in the classrooms. Hope I have answered your question.
Yes, ma'am. So to other participants, if there are any discussions, you can unmute yourselves. So I think, ma'am, we can go ahead with the conclusion.
Yeah. Okay.
All right then. So finally, we are bringing today's webinar to the close and extending our deepest gratitude to Archana ma'am for the valuable insight and the practical perspective she has shared. Okay. So if there are still any questions, you can please write it down in the chat section if there are any raised hands over here. So the session clearly highlighted how the schools can move from marks-based evaluation to the meaningful learner-centered, the assessment practices. A heartfelt thank you to all the participants. Your engagement and the thoughtful participation made today's webinar truly enriching, and we hope it has given you clarity and confidence in approaching the holistic assessment with the purpose and direction. So before we wrap up, we have shared the feedback link. You can use that in the chat section. You can use that, and please do share your inputs with us so we can continually improve and design the webinars that are more relevant to your needs. Participation certificates will also be shared to you on the mail within a week. Moving ahead, at Luneblaze, we always remain committed to supporting the schools in implementing the frameworks like NEP 2020, HPC, and the SCORE through the practical guidance and sustained support. So thank you once again, everyone, for joining us today, and we look forward to connecting with you again in our upcoming webinars. Thank you so much, and have a good day. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Luneblaze team, and thank you, participants, for joining and participating so actively in the session. Thank you so much.
Thank you.